Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Knowledge Talk or KnowTalk brought to you by the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, with the Mohamed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Knowledge Foundation, MBRF. And today's KnowTalk will be about shifts in communication in the age of mass media. And we are honored to have with us Mohamed Salhi, who is lecturer in international relations of the Middle East and researcher in critical linguistics and European politics. Mohamed's expertise spans the fascinating world of crisis discourse, digital cultures, and even the meme-fueled internet. Mohamed navigates the complex intersections of sociology and linguistics with a sharp eye on how mass media shapes, bans, and sometimes even distorts our understanding of the world. So I will leave you with Mohamed, and I'll be back for the questions, Q&A segment.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Mohamed. Today's talk is a brief exploration of the major societal discussions in the world of social media and in the ubiquity of social media in every pocket, in every house, and so on. And to start, I believe I have my presentation somewhere in here. Suppose so. Yeah, exactly. So to begin with, there's a little story to examine the impact of changing paradigms of communication on how people perceive and how people discuss big societal issues, particularly at critical junctures of big debates, crises, and so on. And one of these is that of the electoral campaigns, or the electoral campaign in the United States in the 1960s between Nixon and Kennedy. At that time, it was the first time we had a televised presidential campaign debate between Nixon and JFK, John Frank Kennedy. The shifting point from radio, from the herd to the scene, has also changed the way we perceive discussions, people, and social actors in general. And this shift also shifted the perspectives on policy positions from what's heard and what's written, or the argumentative schemes, into the PR image of the presidential candidates. In this case, there has been a stark distinction in the images between JFK, between Kennedy, who has makeup, who looked tanned, who had a well-shaved face and well-prepared, compared to Nixon, who looked sick with a 5 o'clock beard. And the interesting thing, or the interesting result about this, is the changing of the likelihood of one of them to become president from Nixon to JFK immediately after the debate, giving an evidence of the importance of image in perceiving debates in general. That also appeared in the shift towards the internet. Now, Obama, who shifted his campaign in a way to YouTube to reach out for the younger electorate, or the younger voters, and Donald Trump, who has shifted completely his narrative towards Twitter and towards tweeting 7-8 times a day, including midnight. And this also means that with the shift towards social media, towards mass communication, and the ubiquity of social media platforms in every phone and every computer right now, means that there's no more gatekeeping for narratives. Now everybody gets the chance to appear and show. And this obviously looks at an opportunity, but also as a challenge, with the fact that, again, everyone gets to create a narrative, a story to the electorate, or during critical junctures, again, such as crises. So no more gatekeeping is one of them. Immediacy is the second one, which means that in times of big events, whatever the nature of the events is, people get to respond immediately instead of waiting for well-drafted, emotionally based communications from big actors. Ubiquity as well is self-explanatory. It also means that these narratives are everywhere, all the time, all at once. Fourthly is personalization, and this is very interesting for academic research to look at, for instance, electoral candidates not only as figures in certain scene, a certain competition for position in the United States or in Europe, but also as influencers in the current sense of the current meaning of the word. That is to say, it's no longer about the composure, it's no longer about the discussion, but also in part about acting the way that TikTok influencers do. At the same time, the opposite happens, that we have also influencers, media stars, appearing in shaping the public opinion through mass communication and acting on behalf of electoral candidates, for instance, and that's the example from 2024 with Elon Musk. The last 2 points are the 2 points that we are going to deal with, diversity of genres and polarization. Polarization means the growing antagonistic and hostile relationship between communities, particularly in social media. So we have the creation of echo chambers where communities create and receive the very same narratives, leading to the risk of having self or personal bias. That is to say, inability to discuss positions with other communities. And of course, this, importantly for our societies today, is it weakens the social trust and cohesion. And this occurs through, again, for the diversity of narratives, through the emotionally charged contents, half-truths, misinformation, and sensationalization, that is to say, crisis discourses. Secondly, echo chambers, as explained earlier, that is to say, communities are created, bounded, in order that it leads pretty much to the same discourses, same stories, the same narratives running around in the empty circle without having the ability for constructive discussions with other groups. Finally, and most importantly, is humor. Humor, at its intersection with art, leads pretty much to memes. We all know memes. These are pictures of cute cats, scenes from funny films, different scenes that are intended to create laughter for people. But memes right now in academia have been defined in different ways, including and not limited to bite-sized nuggets of political ideology that can be discriminatory and exclusionary. So there are no longer these innocent pieces of laughter that we share with our friends or our families, but also they create or they shape perceptions, behaviors, and actions through emblematic representations of the world and people. That is to say, when we look at the people or we look at communities or phenomena, we look at them in their complexity, in their historical sociological complexity. But now, because we can represent a certain group of people based on ethnic, gender, or national, or whatever considerations, we no longer look at them in this complexity, but in terms of a picture or an emblem, a face that we can give to, through the power of Photoshop, tears, laughter, and any other possible feeling. This also leads to the use of these emblematic representations of different groups and ideologies and so into denigrative humor. That is to say, the use of humor to exclude people, the use of humor to very much to trivialize people. And with humor, where denigrative humor tends to come the hate speech and violence. The normalization of violence and hate speech are then becoming central part of mimetic language, as we call it, or mimetic vernacular, in the expression of social positions, ideological positions in general. Additionally, and finally, digital communication and AI currently has shifted the way we communicate, shifted the way of content making, particularly, and most importantly, at times of critical junctures, namely crisis, for instance, big debates, electoral campaigns. And the most important point here that research is trying to analyze by shifting from the classical linguistic and critical linguistic analysis to multimodal ones, is to look at the ability or the art of persuasion through AI, through the construction of either misinformation campaigns, through deep fakes, through previously we would say Photoshop, but now it's generated through AI, but also it enables the filming of the unfilmable. That is to say, making videos of what would be in the future if we go in the direction A, or if we go in the direction B, or as well filming the past in a way that we have never seen it before. So it creates more visual HD narratives for us to take a look at and to base our ideological, social positions based on such narratives. That would be it. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, Si Mohamed.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the audience? In case we don't, I have some. Okay, so yes, from your research into hate speech and crisis discourse, do you think the internet is making us all better communicators, or are we just shouting into the void more loudly?
Again, it's both opportunities, that namely, then since we don't have these gatekeepers for traditional media, people get to speak and people get to communicate and make their stories heard. But at the same time, it allows the creation of what we call digital cultures, in which we could more or less compare them to real cultures in the way that they are, in a way, bounded, loosely connected, and some of them are based not only on self-identification based on common elements, but on the oppositional identification against other groups, leading again to the lack of communication, leading to rupture of social discourse, and again, rupture of social cohesion and normal way of communicating. So again, it does have this advantage of, or opportunity for people to make their stories heard, but at the same time, it makes, again, communication go into a really disconnected way.
Thank you. If memes are the new form of storytelling, do you think we'll one day see them analyzed in literature classes alongside Shakespeare? Or perhaps should we?
In terms of academia, yes. That's already part of my classes, parts of the things that I teach in part of multimodality. There's already a growing body of literature on memes and mimetic language and the use of humorous language on social media in different contexts, obviously in context of marketing, as well as in context of social communication, of crisis, and so. So yes, that's one of them. Again, memes are not only humorous part, but they're storytelling approaches to tell stories very much. So yeah, I would expect them to become not only parts of critical linguistics or critical discourse or critical multimodality, but also in terms of literature itself.
Okay, and what do you find more influential, memes or politicians? Like, who is winning the war of shaping public opinion?
It's a tricky question because we still have the capacity of politicians to influence narratives. We're currently in October. That's the time for the presidential debates. Harris and Trump are having their discussions on pretty much very much a daily basis because of the ubiquity of narratives right now on social media, because everybody, or the electoral campaigns are 24/7 throughout the year based on posts instead of being limited to October as was a couple of decades ago. So when it comes to memes, politicians use memes themselves. That's one of them. And we have a lot of examples of them here in Europe, in the Anglo-Saxon world. And I think it's not the idea of comparing both, but rather seeing both together, because memes, again, are used for that objective, for that political objective, and politicians have that same objective, and they meet somewhere. And if they don't meet, it's the other groups that are for instance, groups are for Donald Trump, for instance, are going to use memes, and it has been the case since 2000, and I suppose 8, where there was Pepe the Frog has become a very central emblem of the electoral campaign of the Republicans then against Hillary Clinton. And when we speak about humorous language or mimetic language, that was also the case with the representations of Hillary Clinton herself through humorous language that then started finding itself from underground cultural spheres on the internet into the normal sphere of social media. And again, it leads us to the problem of to what extent do we have to allow such narratives, for instance, on Twitter. And it's becoming a hub for hate speech against different groups, particularly. So back to your question, it's whether do they meet, not particularly with politicians, but people who follow those politicians use those. So, yeah.
Great, and what do you think is more urgent to fix the online discourse? Is it like hate speech laws or better digital literacy? I'm all for digital literacy because you cannot cut it from the roots. It's impossible to, for me at least, it is impossible
for such narratives and for such stories and for such communication ways to be cut from the root. And I think it is very, very important to understand the way language develops, because in our previous research, we have found that language has developed from the written way of saying this group is bad into very much expressing the same idea with emojis or with little pictures or with emblems or with coded language, as well as other ideas such as LARPing, live action role-playing, where people very much take the personality of some old figure and start speaking in a way that's filled with hate speech. So again, it is rather learning the dynamics of such narratives, learning the dynamic of how language develops, particularly in regards to hate speech and propaganda and persuasion and so on, rather than trying to regulate it, because again, regulation may lead to different ways of developing narratives on the long run.
And do you think traditional media is dying, like traditional forms?
I
like
wouldn't say
journalism.
I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say so. Traditional media is still influential. Part of it because it has shifted its own self into the realm of social media. So platforms right now in Europe, very much in the whole world, have shifted their stories or the links into small captions of 140 or 280 characters that would be the beginning of the news, and that people can build on without even having to read the news. So themselves, they have digitalized historically, and now with social media, they are becoming more and more coming back to overtake the scene of controlling narratives, for instance.
And where do you think we are in the Arab States region?
Unfortunately, is similar. I mean, I have previous research on hate speech in the region based on national considerations and also based on gender considerations. And part of my findings in both cases is the importation of that type of narrative, of the type of communication, particularly humorous and mimetic languages and vernaculars, into our region, and the appropriation of that language in order to pursue our own forms of exclusion against different groups. So it is, in that way, not as probably not as developed as other places in the world, but it's there, and it's very dangerous for the next generation, apparently.
Thank you so much. So
Thank
that's
you.
it from my side. Do we have any? Yes, please.
Thank you, Mohamed. Just I want to ask you about the AI future with the social media. Did you think the AI can stop the social media or can stop your jobs, or you can't? I don't know, because everyone, they talk, and you just now, if you go back a few minutes, you was talking about the AI also. But what do you think?
I think there's one important thing in AI that AI doesn't have, and it's human agency. And regardless of AI at the end of the day is one of the tools to create content, if we speak about social media in general. So it's one of the tools, and who uses the tools are human beings. And if we think about, for instance, in football, we have VAR, the video assistant referee, and people thought that would stop the mistakes, but it made them more, because the person who uses it is human at the end of the day. And I think of AI always as a tool for human beings. The only problem is that it's human beings at the end of the day, and people could use it for negative purposes. And again, it's a tool for human beings, and I don't think it might replace us fully in terms of content making. It makes it easier, apparently, but also it makes it, in a way, harder for people who receive it. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions?
For me, what you said shows very much that the importance of trusted brands is very important, and that you know who's the sender and from where is the curated content coming, and that this is maybe the future, that people are looking more and more in the future for brands they may know already from the traditional world. How's your view on this?
As a critical linguist, I'm very critical myself about even the traditional ones. And one has to do, again, one of your questions was, would it be to control the use of social media or improve literacy? And I think improving literacy would also lead to even those brands to be critically seen. So the trust is there in the traditional forms of media communication and media production and content making. And yeah, I think people would still believe brands, evidently, because that's based on marketing, that's based on the art of persuasion, and that's a bit problematic, again, because of the lack of critical agency, the lack of critical thinking in perceiving where the news come from or where the narratives come from. And again, whether it's this or this, I think it's always problematic. Previous research, for instance, critical discourse analysis, critical studies, and critical linguistics are becoming very, very critical of traditional media. I mean, it has been the case for a while, but now it's becoming more and more critical of traditional media in the way of using specific textual resources, such as metaphorical imagery, for instance, or figurative language in general. And again, it does not mean that we would have more trust in the traditional brands, but rather, I think my idea is to be critical of everything.
Any final question? I guess not. So it's time to wrap up. Thank you so much, Si Mahmoud, for this informative and straight to the point and very insightful session. Next up, we'll be having with us Marianne Greiche, who is an architect and design researcher. However, the session will start at 12:30, so that's in like 8 minutes maybe. So see you then.